Classic cars with aircraft engines. When engineers went completely crazy. This is the story of classic cars with aircraft engines. Machines that were never meant to be polite. They were too loud for city streets, too heavy for race circuits, and too powerful for the tires underneath them. They did not corner gracefully. They did not idle peacefully. They coughed, spat flames, shook the ground, and reminded everyone nearby that there was a time when engineering was not about refinement. It was about nerves. Fiat Mephistopheles. The Fiat Mephistopheles did not arrive like a normal car. It arrived like a mechanical threat. Built in the 1920s, it began as a Fiat racing chassis, but that clearly was not enough for the people around it. A normal engine would have made it quick. A racing engine would have made it competitive. So they took something far more dramatic, a massive Fiat A12 aircraft engine, the kind of engine designed to pull airplanes through the sky, and dropped it into a car that looked barely prepared to survive the experiment. The result was not beautiful in the traditional sense. It was long, narrow, exposed, and brutal. The driver sat behind that enormous engine like a man riding a cannon shell. There was no modern safety cage, no aerodynamic comfort, and no sense that anyone had paused to ask whether this was a good idea. And then it started. Imagine the sound. Not the smooth scream of a modern supercar. Not the polished bark of a racing V8. This was slower, deeper, more physical. Each combustion pulse felt separate, like a hammer striking inside a steel drum. The whole car trembled before it moved, as if the engine had to argue with the earth before agreeing to roll forward. On the road, Mephistopheles was not driven so much as contained. The steering was heavy. The brakes were primitive. The tires were skinny, almost absurdly delicate for the violence being pushed through them. At speed, the driver was out in the open, goggles shaking, hands gripping a wheel that offered no kindness. The wind hit like thrown gravel. The engine heat poured backwards. Fuel and oil scented the air. But this car had purpose. It was built for speed in an era when speed records were closer to acts of bravery than technical achievements. Every mile per hour had to be physically conquered. There was no smooth surface, no perfect test facility, no computer simulation predicting airflow. There was only road, throttle, courage, and a machine that sounded angry at being trapped on the ground. The Mephistopheles name fit because it felt like a bargain had been made. Power in exchange for peace. Speed in exchange for comfort. Glory in exchange for risk. But if the Fiat was a devil from the old world, the next machine felt like something pulled straight from a battlefield hangar and forced onto four wheels. Brutus. Brutus looks less like a car and more like an argument between a blacksmith and an aircraft mechanic. Built in Germany, Brutus carries a BMW aircraft engine so large that the rest of the vehicle seems to exist only to keep it from falling over. The engine dominates everything. It sits out front like a monument to excess, an enormous lump of metal with exhaust pipes that appear more like artillery barrels than automotive plumbing. There is a particular menace to Brutus because it does not try to hide what it is. Some cars are elegant. Some cars wear their engineering beneath sculpted bodywork. Brutus has no interest in that. It shows the machinery openly. The pipes, the rivets, the exposed components, the huge rotating masses, all of it is right there, visible and honest. When it fires, the atmosphere changes. The starter turns. The engine catches unevenly. And suddenly, the air is filled with heavy mechanical thunder. The exhaust does not simply make noise. It punches. It shakes nearby bodies, rattles camera equipment, and sends birds out of trees. Flames lick from the pipes during throttle blips. The whole car rocks with torque before it has even moved an inch. And that is the thing about aircraft engines in cars. They were designed for a completely different world. In an aircraft, a huge engine could spin a propeller through open air, pulling weight forward with room to breathe. In a car, that same force had to be squeezed through a clutch, gearbox, driveshaft, axle, and tires touching the ground in four small patches. It was like asking a locomotive to dance in a village street. Brutus moves with a kind of terrifying reluctance at first, heavy and mechanical, as if every part is waking up separately. Then the throttle opens, and the car surges forward with a violence that feels older than motorsport. It does not accelerate with the clean precision of something modern. It lunges. It heaves itself ahead, nose rising, exhaust cracking, engine roaring with the voice of another century. There is no softness here. The driver works constantly. The machine needs muscle, judgment, and respect. Every input matters. Too much throttle and the rear tires are overwhelmed. Too little commitment and the engine complains. The car is alive in the worst and best sense of the word. Brutus is not about lap times. It is about presence. It is about standing nearby and realizing that engineering can have personality. Not a friendly personality. Not a comfortable one. But personality all the same. From there, the story moves to a machine with more grace, but no less madness. Napier Railton. The Napier Railton is what happens when brute force learns manners. At first glance, it has a cleaner shape than Brutus, a long silver body that seems built for speed rather than spectacle. But beneath that body sits the Napier Lion, a W-12 aircraft engine with a reputation forged in the air and later unleashed on land. This was not a backstreet experiment hammered together for noise. This was a serious record-breaking machine, built with intent, balance, and purpose. And yet, it still carried that same wild idea at its heart. Take the power of the sky and force it through wheels. The Napier Railton became one of the great speed machines of Brooklands, the legendary British racing circuit with its steep concrete banking and dangerous surface. Brooklands was not a sanitized racetrack. It was fast, rough, and unforgiving. The banking rose like a gray wall. Cars climbed it at speed, engines echoing off the concrete, drivers holding their line while the world tilted around them. On that circuit, the Napier Railton found its kingdom. Where Brutus feels like a beast being restrained, the Napier Railton feels like a predator built for open ground. Its aircraft engine gave it tremendous power, but the chassis and body gave that power direction. It could stretch its legs. It could run. Picture it entering the banking, the silver body low and purposeful, the engine note building into a hard mechanical roar. The car loads up against the curve. The suspension works. The tires grip. The driver stays steady behind the wheel. There is a moment when everything seems balanced on a knife edge. Speed, weight, noise, courage. Then it holds. That is what separates the Napier Railton from the cruder monsters. It was not merely powerful. It was composed enough to make power useful. Still dangerous, still demanding, still from an age when a mistake could be final, but there was intelligence in it. You can feel the difference. This was not just a giant engine looking for a home. This was a machine built around a giant engine by people who understood what speed required.